Good morning, Kenya. It is the 11th day of February 2025. A good Tuesday it is. The program on air is The Morning Momentum, and this is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. You are definitely rolling with the host with the most. Alfonsoh Ouma is my name. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the papers this morning. We start with the Daily Nation. Now, on the front page, agony for youth after Ruto visit. Now, intolerance, arrests followed an order by President Ruto after some youth heckled him. 50 suspects arrested in a police crackdown in Isiolo town on Saturday, hours after President Ruto's meeting was marred by heckling, were yesterday arraigned amid protests by relatives and human rights activists who accused the government of intimidation and harassment. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, also on page 10, voting blocks to watch in 2027. An analysis of population projections over the next 20 years shows a surge in northeastern, even as President William Ruto abolished strict vetting to ease issuance of national identification cards to the region's residents. The estimates suggest a population growth slump in the populous Mount Kenya and a surge in traditional sparsely populated areas. You want to catch up with more insights of that on page 10. Now, on the second page and the third page of the Daily Nation this morning, it's all about Valentine's. Now, cash bouquets on the rise as women fall out of love with flowers. Quite interesting right there. We'll take a look at that in a short while. Also on page 34 this morning, 1 year later, Kiptum's assets frozen over family disputes. So you want to catch up with that on page 34 of the Nation this morning. On page 8, graft war. Now, special audit of counties targets secret multiple bank acts. Robert Aule is changing lives one expectant mother at a time as he volunteers his services in the far-flung Ngoron in Baringo. It's about compassion, connection, and empowering families, said Robert Aule, his withered hands gesturing expressively as he speaks. For more than 3 decades, his remarkable 62-year-old service has served as what local women affectionately call their mid-husband, a male midwife whose gentle touch and unwavering dedication has helped bring over 320 new lives into the world. Such an amazing story right there on page 3. Now, let's take a quick look at page 4. Travel for youth after Ruto heckling in Isiolo. Relatives and human rights activists accuse the government of intimidation and harassment. Dozens of young people rounded up on Friday and Saturday were held over the weekend and taken to court yesterday and charged retribution. Now, with the exception of one suspect who was accused of obstructing the presidential motorcade on February 7th, the other 49 seized on Saturday were all charged with being drunk and disorderly. You want to catch up with that on page 4. Let's move on quickly to page 5. We planted 750 million trees in 2024, says President William Ruto. Now, head of state says there is need to ensure adequate funding for missions. President's statement means Kenyans planted 2.05 million trees every single day from January 1st to December 31st. All right, quite interesting. Let's move on to page 6. Put a stop to misrule insults, President told. Now, Rigathi tells Ruto that enough is enough, adding that the head of state must stop demeaning his office. Former Deputy President alleges a plot to poison him because of his rising influence. Now, let's dig into that. Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has lashed out President William Ruto to telling him to respect the presidency and stop insulting those faulting his administration for its unpopular policies. In what appears to be a bare-knuckle confrontation, Mr. Gachagua told his former boss that enough is enough and threatened to mobilize his supporters to block major highways in street protests should Dr. Ruto continue to disrespect those who propelled him to power? You want to catch up with that insight on page 6. On page 7 this morning, how Uhuru and Rigathi Cold War threatens anti-Ruto alliance. Now, Muranga women representative says former president wants nothing to do with the former deputy president. Now, the tense relations between former President Uhuru Kenyatta and former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua could undermine opposition efforts to forge an alliance against President William Ruto's 2027 re-election bid. While Kenyatta's faction, largely members of his Jubilee party, appear to be fronting the presidential candidacy of his ally, former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, the Gachagua camp seems to be leaning towards Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka. The political scene this morning, let's take a look at the differences. Leaders harbor political paranoia. Now, Mr. Gachagua, in an interview with the media on Sunday, dismissed Jubilee Party as a red wheelbarrow, sarcastically likening it to the United Democratic Alliance, whose party symbol is a wheelbarrow, though yellow. For her part, Muranga women rep offered to help Mount Kenya understand what goes on between Mr. Kenyatta and Mr. Gachagua, and I quote her, I can tell you without any fear of reprisal that Mr. Kenyatta vows in private that he needs nothing to do with Gachagua, end of quote. More of those insights on page 7. On page 8 this morning, special audit for counties targets secret multiple bank accounts. Now, public finance laws only permit counties to open accounts at the Central Bank of Kenya. Auditor General, Controller of Budget, tells senators during a midterm assessment, retreat their accounts are illegal. At a glance, counties with a big number of accounts. Now, some of the counties with the highest number of accounts are Bungoma County, which has 321 bank accounts. Baringo County has 292. Migori County has 208 and Kwale 165. Others are Elgeyo Marakwet County with 155, Migori 76, Kwale 64, Kajiado 50 bank accounts, Embu 46, and Kakamega 44 bank accounts. The Controller of Budget authorizes withdrawals from public funds, which include Consolidated Fund, Equalization Fund, and the County Revenue Fund. Before the authorization, the Controller of Budget must be satisfied that the withdrawal is legal. More of that is beefed up for you on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, let's take a look at page 10 on polls. Data points to major vote blocks change in 20 years. Now, Northeastern region seen as a major factor in future elections amid claims of population numbers suppression. Estimates suggest a significant population growth in regions that have traditionally been sparsely populated. You'll take a look at the data point on page 10. Let's move on and take a look at page 12. Quick fast, Rai versus Sarai. Bitter sugar war breaks out at Mumias. Now, President directed that West Kenya Sugar take up and run ethanol distillery and cogeneration plants. Sarai Group is currently running the sugar milling plant under a 20-year lease. Now, the decision to have the Jaswant Singh Rai Group take control of the Mumias Sugar Company cogeneration plant has revived the better feud with his brother Sarbi Singh Rai, with a section of MPs threatening to take the matter to Parliament. Last week, milling operations at Mumias Sugar came to a standstill after local leaders and farmers stormed the factory in opposition to the takeover of the ethanol distillery and cogeneration plants by Rai's West Kenya Sugar Company. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 14. How mistaken car number nearly cost my life. Now, this is a mistaken identity. Health officer was set free when those who had seized him realized they had the wrong person. Robbery victim was hijacked on his way home and shot, the bullet causing serious internal injuries, damaging lungs and ribs. You want to catch up with that human interest story on page 14 this morning. Let's take a quick look at the expert opinion. State can work with citizens in managing public affairs. Now, Mbadi's decision to walk to Jivanji after NTV show some 200 meters away was refreshing. You want to catch up with that opinion on page 16. On page 17 this morning, tackle reasons for ID vetting fast. Now, Somalia, Iridentia, the dream to unite all Somali-speaking territories in the Horn of Africa, if necessary by forceful conquest, has never really died. That story is beefed up for you on page 17. On the DN2 article this morning, it's all about powering SMEs, and Samaki Cookies entrepreneur bets on affordable, nutrient-dense snack. Quite interesting, Samaki Cookies. All right, you'll catch up with that on the DN2 article this morning. You also have the Health Nation treatment beefed up for you right there. Now, let's move on and take a look at county news. Now, inside vicious fight for Tycoon's 1 billion shillings estate. Now, former driver Robert Kavisu was the only one who knew about his will. 3 years after Thuo's death, his family members are locked in a bitter inheritance battle. This is in Nakuru County. Let's take a look a little bit at that. Until his death, former Nakuru Mayor Joseph Thuo carried his will in his Land Cruiser V8, perhaps for fear that it could be altered by his family members. He kept it a secret, and none of his known two wives nor his children knew about it. The only person who knew about the existence and location of his last wishes was his trusted driver, Robert Kavisu. According to court documents, he even translated the will to Kikuyu language and kept both copies in his vehicle. However, 3 years after his death, Thuo's decision to entrust his will with the driver is now subject to a bitter inheritance battle among his family members. In Nyeri County this morning, pneumonia, assault, or a fall, puzzle of baby Kailan's death. Now, on the night of January 26th, 1.5-year-old Kailan, Arizona, was rushed to a local health facility. Struggling to breathe, a medic at the Muega Health Center diagnosed her with pneumonia. She was immediately referred to Mary Immaculate Hospital, Muega, 400 meters away. You want to continue with that story on page 21. Now, in Mombasa County this morning, activists call for concrete government response to femicide. Now, human rights activists have raised an alarm over the increasing cases of femicide in the country, calling on the government to take immediate action. Speaking during a press briefing at Coast General Teaching and Referral Hospital Mortuary in Mombasa, Haki Africa Rapid Response Officer Matthias Shipeta condemned the brutal killing of an identified woman whose dismembered body was discovered in Likoni on Saturday. In Laikipia County, students and family urges IPOA to speed up death probe. Now, Geoffrey died in police custody after being arrested for alleged theft in Rimuruti. Let's move on to page 23. How Lake Victoria youth harness waste for biogas. Now, young people produce clean energy using hyacinth, cow dung, and chicken and goat droppings in Dunga. Now, you want to catch up with more of those insights on page 23. Also on page 23, MP wants TFAM reinstated from using drones in residential area. Now, Nandi Hills MP Bernard Kitur has petitioned the Data Protection Commission over the use of drones on a residential estate, citing a breach of privacy. In a letter addressed to Data Protection Commissioner Immaculate Kasait, the first-term MP wants investigations conducted into the Eastern Produce Tea Company's use of drones on Kimasas Cooperative's Sitoi estate. You will catch up with that on page 23. Let's take a look at the international news this morning. Zuma party accuses white group of treason over Trump attack. Trump last week signed an executive order cutting financial assistance to South Africa. New law empowers states to seize land owned by whites in order to redistribute it to poor blacks. You want to catch up with that on page 24. Briefly, New York, Rushdie to face attacker in trial. Now, a jury will hear attorneys' opening statements on Monday in the trial of Handi Matar, who is charged with attempting to murder a novelist Salman Rushdie at New York lecture. Rushdie is then due to be among the first witnesses to testify at the Chautauqua County Court in Mayville, New York, a few minutes north of Chautauqua Institution, a rural arts haven where the writer was stabbed in August 2022. In Gaza, Gaza is not for sale, Hamas says. Now, Gaza is an integral part of the occupied Palestinian territory, not property that can be bought or sold, Hamas said on Monday in response to United States President Donald Trump's remarks about his country, quote unquote, buying and owning Gaza. You want to catch up with that on page 24. Now, on business news this morning, insurers half-year net profit rises on investment income. Net profit for half-year ended June 2024 rose 2.3 times. Profit rose to 15.85 billion shillings from 6.93 billion shillings posted in similar period last year. In numbers, 15.8 billion shillings is the estimated insurers' net profit for half-year ended June 2024. 6.9 billion shillings is the estimated insurer's net profit posted in the preceding similar period, and 2.3 billion shillings is the underwriting losses from insuring private motor vehicles during the period under review. Now, also Kenya Power to invest 889 million shillings in new lines. National Power Distributor Kenya Power has announced that it is investing 889 million shillings to construct new power lines in Western Kenya as it targets to utilize ongoing and complete energy projects. The new lines that will cover 11 counties will see the utility firm expand electricity infrastructure in the region that has suffered blackouts, mainly due to inadequate supply. Now, briefly, in the core system, SA investor lose bid to freeze Agony's accounts. Nairobi-based investment bank Genfis Capital got a reprieve after a court rejected an application to freeze its bank accounts over a debt feud with a South African businessman. In matters loans, Coop Bank cuts its base lending rate to 14.5%. Cooperative Bank of Kenya has cut its lending base rate by 2% percentage points to 14.5%, marking its first major reduction in the price of loans since the central bank rate started coming down in August last year. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at the sports news this morning. Local pros threaten legal action over magical Kenya Open slots. Now, Kenyan pros demand for 8 more slots allocated to them as per the contract. Tournament director Patrick Obath says increase in allocations is still being discussed. Now, with just 10 days to go before the magical Kenya Open trees off at Muthaiga Golf Club, a storm is brewing among local professional golfers, and a section of Kenyan pros is demanding additional slots in the DP World Tour event set for February 20th to 23rd, threatening to take legal action if their request is not guaranteed. Now, let's move on and take a look at more stories on sports right here on page 34 and on matters athletics. 1 year later, marathon record holder Kiptum's assets frozen over ongoing family disputes. Nike is withholding about 25 million shillings pledged to the family due to the ongoing disagreements. Kiptum's parents deny allegations that they chased away his wife, Athena, from the house constructed by the government last year. A lot has happened in the last 1 year since world marathon record holder Kelvin Kiptum's tragic demise and burial on his farm in Cherunya, Uasin Gishu County. A mixed bag, really, with the much talked about prefabricated 3-bedroom house built on the orders of President William Ruto in 6.5 days ahead of the champion's burial still intact, and the compound boasting impressive, well-manicured grass on the one hand. You want to catch up with that on page 34. In matters football, coach Cheche faces uphill task of rebuilding under-17 squad. Now, Kenya will face Uganda in a 2-legged 2025 FIFA Under-17 World Cup qualifier. Junior Starlets made history by becoming the first Kenyan national football team to feature in the World Cup after playing in the Dominican Republic. Now, on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, Ministry says inherited debt of 43 billion shillings is hurting SHA. Now, chronic and critical illnesses components of fund yet to be activated. PS reveals that authority is owed over 25 billion shillings by various ministries and agencies. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page. Lastly, as we conclude, AGOA may not survive Trump, Kitui warns. Now, the Future of African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, looks bleak under United States President Donald Trump. Former United Nations Conference on Trade and Development Secretary General Mukhisa Kitui has warned. Dr. Kitui yesterday said the extension of AGOA hangs in the balance, with the U.S. likely to end the program that has greatly benefited Kenya and other African countries. Now, with that story of AGOA, we come to the end of today's session of the Morning Momentum, this beautiful Tuesday, 11th day of February 2025. Thank you so much for keeping us company all through the program and for choosing Younib TV. We are grateful. Now, we also extend our heartfelt gratitude to all those who made this broadcast a success. Behind the lens, Raphael, Wangila, and the chief controller this morning has been Peninah, Wachera. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful day. I have been your host, Alfonsoh, Ouma.